hiding tens of thousands from my parents. I've been hiding tens of thousands of dollars from my parents for years. I'm a 20-year-old guy who started off in high school with hardly any money. Like most kids, I didn't have a financial safety net, and I definitely wasn't getting any real support from the adults in my life. At the time, my biggest goal was to carve out a future that offered me some independence, so I delved headfirst into honing my skills as a 3D artist. During high school, I was lucky if I made a couple $100 every few weeks. The creative industry can be cutthroat, especially for teenagers trying to break in, so any amount felt like a huge win. However, once my mother and stepdad realized I was earning money, they started pushing me to shoulder more and more household expenses. Let me paint the scene a bit more. We're not a struggling family at the poverty line. We're very much middle class. We have a decent home, multiple cars, and my mom and stepdad love their luxury vacations. They'd take these trips to extravagant beach resorts or big tourist destinations, always coming back with loads of photos flaunting how relaxed and happy they were. Oh, of course, travel in itself isn't a bad thing. Everyone deserves a break and some exploration from time to time, but it's a different story when you're pressuring your teenage children to chip in for groceries, mortgage payments, or other bills just so you can keep funding an endless cycle of high-end travel. To be fair, they weren't outright neglectful in the legal sense, but they definitely didn't offer anything close to robust emotional or financial support. I have siblings, some of whom are still in high school, and they've faced the same story. We've all had to work on top of our studies, which means none of us could really concentrate on academics the way many of our peers could. While other kids were maybe picking up an odd shift here or there or focusing solely on homework, we were scrambling to juggle part-time jobs or freelance gigs with a full load of classes. For me, though, the story took an interesting turn because I kept at my 3D art career. At first, I earned just enough to cover the basics. Some personal items, maybe a bit of extra cash for weekend outings some. But eventually, through trial and error, online networking, and a relentless drive to improve my portfolio, I started landing better-paying gigs. Early on, I learned that the creative industry demands you prove your worth before people are willing to pay you what you deserve. Clients often want to haggle your prices down or promise exposure instead of actual money. There were countless nights when I stayed up until dawn, finishing projects for clients in different time zones, hoping that one of these leads would turn into more stable, better-paying work. I poured my soul into that hustle. It was exhausting, but it felt like a lifeline. Having grown up in a household where my parents felt entitled to my earnings, I became fiercely protective of every cent I made. At first, I followed their demands halfway, giving a little bit now and then toward bills. But I soon noticed how my contributions didn't lead to any actual relief for me or my siblings. It simply gave my mom and stepdad more financial freedom to book their next vacation or upgrade something frivolous around the house. Instead of appreciating my efforts, they'd start expecting it as normal. It became, "Oh, you got paid again. We lent X amount this month," rather than, "Thank you for helping the family out." Growing resentful, I decided I wasn't going to live that way. We went in desperate need, and I knew that if my parents cut back on their luxury expenses, they'd be just fine covering the essentials. My siblings and I weren't being asked to help because we were on the brink of foreclosure, or anything dire. It was more like a family of comfortable means trying to become even more comfortable at the expense of their kids. It rubbed me the wrong way. So I started quietly saving. I stopped broadcasting how much I was earning, and I didn't leave my pay stubs lying around. I got smarter about maintaining separate bank accounts and making sure that money came in under the radar. Little by little, those savings grew. At first it was a few hundred, which turned into a few thousand. Then, after a lucky break with a big freelance project, I had a major leap in income. Once I realized how much I was capable of earning if I poured my energy into my craft, my motivation skyrocketed. There was a point when my mother or stepdad would ask how much I made on a project, and I would undersell it by a significant margin. Maybe I'd say I made half or even a third of what I actually did. It was to the point that they still expected a cut, so I'd give them a small fraction, still leaving the rest safely tucked away. Of course, guilt was a nagging feeling at first, but it was overshadowed by a sense of self-preservation and an understanding that my parents were fully capable of fending for themselves. I wasn't depriving the household of basic necessities. I was just making sure they couldn't use me as a cash cow. My girlfriend is the only person outside my siblings who fully knows the extent of my hidden savings. She's been a rock for me. She listened to my frustrations and worries, often reminding me that I have every right to keep my money if my parents are living comfortably and not actually in need of financial help. It's not like I'm selfishly hoarding it while my family starves. In fact, my siblings and I have stepped in for each other many times, spotting each other money for a school expense, or covering for a sibling's phone bill if they're in a pinch phone. As time went on, my nest egg became what I'd call tens of thousands of dollars. It's an amount that seemed unreal to me when I first started working as a naive high school freshman. I used to think $1,000 was a fortune. Now I'm in a place where I feel a sense of security I never thought possible, especially at my age. One day, they're likely to find out how much I actually have. Maybe it'll happen when I slip up and leave something open on my computer, or if someone starts snooping around my financial statements, or maybe it'll be more dramatic, like me announcing that I'm moving out and revealing I can pay a year's rent up front. I'm not entirely sure how that discovery moment will unfold, but I do know it's coming eventually. And when it does, I'll likely leave their house in short order. Part of me is ready to be done with the constant tension, to have a place where I'm not worried about being cornered for extra cash every other week. If I move out, they won't really have the leverage to guilt-trip me for household expenses anymore. And if they push too hard, it'll be proof that what they really want is just my money, not a meaningful relationship with me. I want to be clear about something. I'm not some stingy kid who refuses to pay for anything out of pure selfishness. I handle my own bills. My phone, car insurance, gas, food, personal items, whatever I need to keep myself going. I'm also more than willing to help my siblings whenever they're in a bind. I've covered their after-school activity fees, chipped in for new shoes when they outgrew their old ones, and sometimes I just slip them a bit of cash to lighten their own burdens. If I believed for a second that my parents genuinely needed help with the mortgage, I'd consider contributing, but they don't. They make enough money. They just enjoy having a lifestyle that goes beyond what I think is reasonable when you're leaning on your kids for support. Honestly, it's not that I begrudge them their vacations or hobbies. If that's what they want out of life, they have every right to pursue it. But expecting their high school-age children to assist financially so that those luxuries remain uninterrupted, that crosses the line into exploitation, in my opinion. It's one thing to encourage a sense of responsibility or teach kids about budgeting by asking them to chip in a little. It's another thing entirely to treat them as a secondary income stream. Occasionally, I think about how all of this might look from an outsider's perspective. If I share my story with a coworker or a friend, the reactions vary. Some people come from really tough backgrounds where every family member has no choice but to hustle just to afford rent and utilities. They might not see an issue with pooling resources because, for them, it's a matter of survival. However, in my situation, it's not survival. It's extra. My parents use the money to upgrade the car lease or to extend their trips in exotic destinations. They have the means to live comfortably. They just want more. I'd be lying if I said I didn't struggle with some internal conflict about it all. As a kid, you're taught to respect your parents and help the family. Culturally, in many traditions, it's normal for adult children to support their parents or even extended family. But in those cultures, it usually goes hand in hand with the parents having made sacrifices and truly needing the extra help. My parents never made real sacrifices for us beyond the standard, "we feed and clothe you" baseline. And even then, we had to buy most of our own clothes as soon as we were old enough to earn money. My mother's argument often boils down to, "We're a family. We should all chip in." Yet, ironically, the family aspect never comes into play when they're booking flights for a getaway or buying themselves expensive items. My siblings and I rarely benefit from those choices, at least not in any significant way. I learned to see past the rhetoric and realize that sometimes people will throw around the word family to guilt-trip others into doing what they want. It's also interesting how this dynamic shaped my relationship with work. On one hand, I'm grateful that the financial pressures pushed me to develop marketable skills early on. It's not every day you hear about a high school kid going toe-to-toe with professional street artists for gigs. That adversity lit a fire under me. I had a strong drive to succeed, to be independent. On the other hand, I missed out on a more carefree adolescence. While other kids were playing sports or hanging out after school, I was hunched over my computer, learning 3D modeling software, debugging bizarre rendering errors, and replying to client emails. I sometimes wonder what it would have been like to have parents who saw my budding career and said, "Hey, this is awesome, Mon. We'll give you space to grow, focus on your school and your art, and we'll take care of the rest." Had that been the case, maybe I'd have progressed even faster, with less stress. Then again, maybe I needed that adversity to become who I am now. Around junior year, my earnings began to surpass what most teenagers in my circle even dreamed of. Still, I continued to pretend I was making just enough to cover my personal expenses and maybe a small fraction for the household. My mom and stepdad seemed a bit suspicious occasionally, like they knew there was no way I was working that hard for so little fide. They'd drop comments like, "That's all you earned. Shouldn't advanced 3D design pay better?" Or, "Maybe you're not charging clients enough." I'd just shrug and go along with it. Let them think I was a poor negotiator. It was better than them finding out the truth and demanding a larger cut. The secrecy became an art form in itself. I'd use multiple email addresses to manage different aspects of my business. One for official client interactions, one for banking, another for marketing or social media. I had password protection on everything, ensuring that if my family wanted to snoop, they'd hit a digital wall. On my phone, I kept notifications vague, labeling them generically so that an incoming payment notification wouldn't stand out. Yes, it was stressful, but it was also empowering to watch my savings climb. I opened a separate bank account, one nobody knew about, and started funneling the lion's share of my earnings there. The rest went into a more visible account that I wasn't afraid to talk about, the one that always had a small balance to seem plausible. Once I graduated from high school and turned 18, the real question became, do I move out now or stick around for a while longer? Financially, I could have afforded a small apartment, though it would have been a stretch to also afford college tuition if I wanted to keep studying. Ultimately, I decided to stay at home a bit longer for one major reason. I could continue saving. If I moved out prematurely, my living expenses would balloon, making it tougher to accumulate a safety net large enough to be truly life-changing. I also had my siblings to think about. They were still in high school, dealing with the same pressure I did. Now that I was older, I could covertly help them in ways my parents weren't willing to. If one sibling had a school trip fee they couldn't afford, I'd stealthily cover it and say it was scholarship money or a gift from a relative. Another sibling needed a new laptop for their part-time job. I'd find a good deal online, get it, and let them borrow it indefinitely. Our parents had no idea. They just assumed the school or a kind friend pitched in ill. On good days, I tried to see it as a game of wits. I was effectively outsmarting my parents' attempts to exploit my earnings while also building a better future for myself. On bad days, it felt suffocating. I'd lie in bed, thinking about how I shouldn't have to hide my income from my family. They should want to see me succeed, not see me as an additional line of revenue. It was frustrating to watch them come home from some flashy trip, bragging about how gorgeous the beaches were, while my siblings struggled with textbooks and job applications, worried about how to pay for everyday items. Now that I'm 20, I see the horizon more clearly. I'm nearing a point where I might announce my independence. The balance in my hidden account is more than I ever expected to have at this age. It's not enough for me to be set for life or anything, but it's definitely enough to feel secure. Enough to rent a place comfortably, pay some tuition fees, or even invest in better equipment to advance my 3D art career. My girlfriend has been urging me to take the leap, get my own place, and distance myself from the constant stress. I'm tempted to follow her advice, but a small part of me hesitates. She and I have talked about moving in together, which is a big step. Then again, it could be the perfect solution. She understands my family dynamic and we share similar values about finances. She believes people should help each other when it's truly needed, but not feed someone else's vices. When the day does come to move out, I wonder if I'll tell them how much I've been saving. There's a revenge fantasy part of me that wants to open my bank account in front of them and say, "Look how much of a fool you took me for." But I realize that might cause more drama than it's worth. Another part of me wants to quietly slip out, sign a lease, and let them draw their own conclusions. If I just vanish, they might suspect I've got enough funds to sustain myself, but won't have hard proof. Admittedly, I do sometimes fantasize about them realizing I've been financially outmaneuvering them for years, about them feeling some sort of regret or remorse. But realistically, I know that in life, people don't always come to moral epiphanies. They might just be angry or feel betrayed. Yet what about all the times they put their own desires above their kids' basic academic and emotional needs? From my perspective, if there's any betrayal, it started on their end. I'm not perfect, of course, and I understand that adult life is complicated. Maybe my parents had financial struggles I never saw and felt genuinely pressed at times. Maybe they thought they were teaching us to be resilient by making us earn our keep. However, those possibilities don't negate the fact that they're capable of living comfortably if they cut out a fraction of their extravagances. Nor does it excuse the manipulative pressure they placed on me and my siblings. Sometimes I look at the bigger picture. My life trajectory has been altered by this entire experience. From a young age, I knew how to make money, budget, negotiate, and navigate financial transactions that some adults twice my age struggle without. At the same time, I also learned how to hide, deceive, and mistrust the people closest to me. Is that a fair trade-off? It's hard to say. Part of me regrets not having a carefree childhood, but another part is proud of the skill set I've developed. In any event, I'm moving forward with the knowledge that I have a plan. Each new freelance gig or job opportunity I land goes into building that plan further. I'm branching out, learning new software, taking on bigger projects. My client list is slowly expanding, and I'm even getting referrals from satisfied customers who appreciate both my technical expertise and my professionalism. I see a future in 3D design, or perhaps related fields like virtual reality development or game design. My ultimate dream is to run my own studio, maybe bring in other artists I trust, people who are talented but overlooked. I also dream of being the kind of parent who doesn't see their children as potential breadwinners. If I ever have kids, I want them to focus on what they love or on their studies without fear of being financially exploited. Sure, I'll encourage them to do chores or hold part-time jobs for life experience, but I'd never expect them to fund my vacations. We'll travel as a family if we can afford it, and if not, we won't. That's my vision of healthy parenthood. A stark contrast to what I've experienced. Looking back, it's remarkable how much is driven by a simple desire for freedom. Freedom from worrying that I'll be cornered for money. Freedom from feeling like I owe more than I can comfortably give. Freedom for my siblings too, so that they can see there's a light at the end of this tunnel. If I manage to break the cycle, maybe they'll follow suit. They're all incredibly talented. Some are into music, others into art or technology. I share tips with them about freelancing, hoping they'll figure out ways to earn without drawing too much attention from our parents soon. Sometimes on rare quiet evenings when the house is empty and I'm caught up on my projects, I take a moment to reflect on how surreal this all feels. I'm basically living two financial lives. One the family sees, scraping by, modest success, minimal savings, and one that remains hidden, a growing fund, multiple client relationships, bigger ambitions. It's stressful, but I keep telling myself it's temporary. Eventually, I'll merge these two realities. Once I'm out of this house, I can be fully transparent with my finances, at least to people I trust. Until that day comes, I keep my eyes on the prize. I also maintain a clear boundary. I pay for my necessities, and I occasionally help my siblings covertly, but I refuse to bankroll my parents' luxuries. This stance might come off as cold or selfish to those who believe in absolute familial loyalty, but I have come to see loyalty as a two-way street. If they were truly loyal to me, they wouldn't sabotage my chances at building a stable future just to maintain their high-end lifestyle. People have asked me if I plan on reconciling with them in the future. It's hard to say. I'm not burning the bridge completely. I'm just not giving them the financial control they want. Maybe over time, as we all grow older, they'll realize that a healthy parent-child relationship shouldn't revolve around money. Maybe they'll come to appreciate me for who I am, not for what I can contribute to their mortgage or their next trip to some tropical resort. Or maybe they won't, in which case the distance might be the best outcome for my well-being. I should mention I'm grateful for those who have given me support and advice along the way. Friends, online communities, and especially my girlfriend. Their input often affirmed that I wasn't crazy or heartless for wanting to protect my earnings. They reminded me that boundaries are important even, or perhaps especially, with family members. In the end, it boils down to this. I worked my tail off to get where I am, and I taught myself advanced software techniques, studied industry trends, and built a portfolio that gets me paid. No one else in my household contributed to that journey, so they don't get to swoop in and benefit without a real need or a genuine partnership. I'm proud of what I've accomplished, and I'm prepared to keep that hidden until I can fully secure my independence. Someday, maybe I'll look back on this period with a sense of relief that it's over. I imagine my future self telling the story. Back when I was 20, I had to hide tens of thousands of dollars from my own parents just so I could build a stable life. It might sound absurd to anyone who's never experienced this type of family dynamic, but for me, it's an everyday reality. I suspect there are plenty of young people out there in somewhat similar situations, keeping secrets for their own protection. To them, I'd say you're not alone. It's not ideal, but sometimes it's the only way. I do feel a sense of sadness that it ever came to this. Family should ideally be a place of trust and mutual support, but the world isn't perfect, and neither are families. If my parents had taken a different approach, maybe sat me down and explained, "We're in a tight spot for these specific reasons. Could you help out temporarily?" I might have been more open to the idea. Instead, it's always been more of a demand laced with guilt, disguised by the veneer of family unity. As for my siblings, I can't tell them exactly how much I've saved, for fear it would slip out, but I do let them know there's hope for them to do something similar. They see my work ethic. They see the small but steady improvements in my gear, or the classes I sign up for. Sometimes they ask me how they can learn to do freelance graphic design or coding. I'm more than happy to mentor them on the side, show them the ropes, or lend them books and tutorials. If at least one of them can follow a similar path, they might also end up with a strong safety net. No one likes living a double life, especially not in their own home. But I've decided this is a necessary step. There's a kind of clarity that comes with the decision. I'm going to protect my future. That might be the best gift I can give myself and, indirectly, my siblings too. If I reach a place of true financial stability, I can help them more openly later on. Maybe help pay for a sibling's college application fees or medical bills, if it ever comes to that. But first, I need to escape this dynamic in which my parents treat me like a source of extra cash. I've read stories online of people who faced similar issues, sometimes far more severe. Some parents drained their kids' college funds or took out loans in their children's names. In a twisted sense, I'm grateful that my situation hasn't escalated to fraud or anything criminal. I at least have autonomy over my bank accounts. My parents never forced themselves onto them legally. That might be partly because I was always careful to keep my finances just out of their reach. As it stands now, I'm comfortable continuing this double life for as long as I need to. The routine is familiar. I get paid, stash it in my hidden account, give a token amount to the family if they ask, and go about my day. I know it's temporary, and I think that's what makes it bearable. Each passing month, my savings grow, and my next steps toward independence become clearer. Still, I do look forward to the day when I can openly celebrate the fruits of my labor. I imagine inviting my closest friends, and hopefully my siblings, to a new apartment or even a small house if I manage to stretch my resources that far. A place filled with the creative energy I've been cultivating in secret. A place where I can hang my digital artworks on the walls, or set up a proper workstation. If my parents ask how I funded it all, maybe I'll shrug and say, I've been good at saving. If they pry too hard, well, that's a conversation that might end in a final farewell. Before concluding, I'll reiterate for anyone who might judge me. Yes, I do cover my own expenses, and I do help my siblings. No one is starving in this household. My parents are, by any measure, capable of living a comfortable life if they adjust their spending. They simply want more, and they want it from me. I've chosen not to comply, because I believe in enabling their lifestyle at the expense of my own future. And that of my siblings would be irresponsible. So that's my story. I'm a 20-year-old who, after years of sacrifice and determination, has accumulated tens of thousands of dollars. No one but my girlfriend and I truly understand how much I've earned. The rest of my family lives under the illusion that I'm making just enough to scrape by. One day, they'll see the truth. By then, I'll likely have packed my belongings, found my own place, and embarked on the next chapter of my life. One where I won't have to constantly hide what I've accomplished. It's bittersweet, but I've chosen this path. I'll keep saving, keep working, and keep preparing. And when that day finally arrives, I'll walk out the front door with my head held high, confident that I can stand on my own 2 feet. My parents might be surprised, even shocked, but I'll know that I did what I had to do to protect my future and give myself the freedom I've always sought. In the end, that's what matters to me most. Preserving my ability to choose how I live and how I spend the money I've rightfully earned through my own blood, sweat, and tears.